flash it in here.
So, Aaron, other people want to showcase and stream demos. Should they be like via Hangout?
There's other people who want to do demos?
We have David.
Oh.
So
sure. What are you demoing on?
Contropedia.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that would be just fine.
Nothing prepared, but the platform is there. So
oh, sure.
From whatever.
Yeah. No, that sounds great. Yeah, let's get.
Oh, okay.
And can you get Matt Flash in there too? I can look up his address quick. Yeah. MFALF. CH. It's a C in there. Yeah, it has CH. Yeah, Wikimedia. There we go. God, that drop-down menu is frustrating. Okay, got it. Oh, I'm apparently in here in another window. I guess not. There we go. Okay, so I think we can just use your audio. And so if you leave yourself unmuted, I'll just leave myself muted, but I'll put my slides up. Yeah, let's do a quick test of that. Oh wait, I gotta get my displays figured out first. Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Well, I'm not gonna do that. This display can't handle. Yes. I guess we're gonna have to. Well, that's a bummer. This is why I went to go test out that other room first. Oh, it's just I have to use a really awkward configuration, but it'll be okay.
I don't know why am I showing up here. I click at you. Shouldn't be your image displaying there?
Ah, yeah, that's a. Oh, so I think that whatever user that is broken. That I think that's why it wasn't showing the right thing.
Hey, do you guys know that you're in the record mode?
I should mute myself.
Oh, there we go.
So if anyone else is interested in showing anything, let us know. Also, you can invite you and you can screen share.
Share.
Join the.
I don't think it's set up.
Yeah.
I think we're ready to go right now. So Matt is the only person who's connected. We broadcast the YouTube link, so I think we're good to go.
Okay, cool. There's a question about the scope of the presentation.
Yeah, so welcome guys. What we're going to do here today is demo a few libraries and I guess a system that are related to valuable data for performing research. So we'll be presenting on two things. Actually, is Yubi still around? Yeah, Yubi, do you want to present on Quarry? Awesome. Okay, so I'll invite Yubi to come up here and present in just a moment. So I'll start with a presentation on some research libraries that I've been working on. Yubi will come up and demonstrate a querying system, a web-based querying system that makes it much easier to run labs against the production databases. And we'll have David, who's presenting. I'm sorry, what was it again?
Contropedia.
Contropedia. Contropedia. Excellent. Without further ado, so there are two things that I want to talk to you about today, and one is sort of before I get to the libraries. You know, I'm sort of preaching to the choir here, but I think it's important to say. So I want to talk about openness for data, algorithms, and research results. And then I'll show you a few libraries that I've been developing that specifically make it easier to do some types of research tasks and tool building tasks on Wikipedia and Wikimedia wikis. Part one, what is open research? Well, so there's sort of three artifacts that are involved in research. The first one is the manuscript, the research paper, the thing that you write up once you're done with the project. And so when we talk about an open manuscript, we say open access. And so I just wanted to pull up an example of a way in which closed access is a pain. So this is the website for American behavioral scientists. This is where I published a study that I ran on Wikipedia. I would say that this is my most seminal work ever on what's going on in the English Wikipedia community, what sort of problems exist, and what we might be able to do about it. It was really important to me that the community of people who are involved in Wikipedia would have an opportunity to benefit from this research. However, this part of the page that says you may purchase this article for $30. $30 is a pretty steep price. $30 is synonymous with saying, I'm not at all, which means that nobody would ever see it. I get $0. I pay to publish, and the publisher also makes money off of what I publish. So just look up disapproval for that. So this is the hack that I did in order to get around this problem and to make sure that my research was available to the community of people who I wanted to be able to consume it, is I wrote an open access summary. And so on the right side of the summary, it says that this is licensed CC by MD. And so you can make copies of it. I don't want you to modify it and leave my name on it, but you can make copies of it and distribute it however you like. And I specifically wrote it with links to Wikipedia essays that address the kinds of phenomena that we were examining in this work. So my goal with this is not to make money or anything like that. Really, all I want to do is have people read my research. That's the reason that I'm doing it in the first place, and this was a way to get around it. Now, this is dumb. Going through all this trouble and writing another summary, having a separate manuscript, it's a pain to cite. So now what I do is I start on the wiki from the beginning. And so I have a screenshot up there now of this article that I've written on Meta. It was some research that I did as a staff member at the Media Foundation on article creation processes in Wikipedia. I keep a work log on the wiki. I start writing everything on the wiki. Each figure that I produce goes to Commons first. And so now, if I do end up submitting a manuscript to a closed access journal, that'll be the second manuscript. The first one is always open access. There's another, so the second artifact that I want to talk to you guys about is data. And so, I should really tell you that I didn't start studying it lists out the database dumps that Wikipedia has, and so Wikipedia has been open data away from the very beginning. And that's been massive to not just myself, but a lot of the research community that's around Wikipedia. Open data can actually direct what gets researched. And so I just wanted to point out, we at the foundation, we have this group on the site, datahub.io, where we list some data sets that we've hand curated, not enough. It's a lot of work to hand curate the data set. There's just one that I want to call your attention to. There's this data set that was produced by Jonathan Morgan, who's one of our staff researchers at the foundation. He did his thesis work on constructing and analyzing the effect of the tea house, which is a mentoring space, a question and answer space on English Wikipedia. And as part of that work, he took his data set, his entire corpus of hand-coded discussions that were taking place on the site, and posted it on datahub.io with thorough descriptions on what's in the data set, what caveats exist, and even suggestions for how you might use this data set in the future to answer new research questions. Oh, and there's a quick screenshot of Jamo. He's awesome. So the third thing is the code we'll talk to you guys about today. I think it's really important that we share our code as researchers, and not just share the libraries that produce our figures, but the libraries that enable us to do the research that we do. And so I want to pick up this quote that Red Hat has on their website about why they're dealing with open source. That Red
Yeah, he was using my microphone. I had forgotten that. Sorry.
Let's just switch mics real quick. Here, can you mute yourself, Enrique, and I'll just unmute myself, and then you can go back.
Yeah, sorry.
Over to that.
I had forgotten that.
Unmuted. Okay. So are my volume bars jumping?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay. So back to this library. So one of the most painful but also most important data resources that the Wikimedia Foundation provides are XML dumps. These are dumps that contain the entire history of every single page that was ever edited in any of the wikis that we have. This is really useful for doing behavioral science because you can track people's work in the wiki. And it's really useful for doing text analysis. A lot of natural language processing work makes use of these XML dumps. But they're a pain to process. They're huge. An uncompressed XML dump of the English language Wikipedia is something around 40 or 50 terabytes right now. You can't put that into memory. So what you have to use is something called a Sax Parser. And so that's what I have up on my screen right now that I'm going to make the font size for a little bit bigger.
Yeah. If I need to get that page or...
Oh yes, these will be listed out afterwards, these particular examples.
Yes.
So with this XML Sax Parser, basically what I'm doing is I'm writing an asynchronous handler. So what it does is it manages a little bit of state. It takes in a starting element, which is like an opening tag in an XML document, end elements, which are closing tags in an XML document, and characters, which are the things that happen in between opening and closing tags, which is generally the text between the tags. And by having a set of functions that asynchronously handle when these events happen, I can have a streaming processor that just reads through the doc from beginning to end, and I don't have to keep a bunch of things in memory, so I can handle the fact that it's 40 terabytes. But this is incredibly counterintuitive. You have to manage a ton of state. You'll notice that inside of here, I'm trying to remember when I'm within a page, when I'm within a revision, when I'm within a contributor, all so that I can make sure that when I print something out, which is this ID that I'm looking for, this is just, this script prints out the revision IDs that appear in a document. Just to print out the revision IDs, I had to handle all this stuff, and then finally at the end, I get to say whatever was in the content last, now it's actually time to print this thing out. There's actually a lot of edge cases that I'm not handling here, but I get to process XML. This is how it was done. Until I sat down and I tried to think of ways that this could be better. And so for those of you that are familiar with Python, you'll be familiar with generators. Generators are a really simple thing. It just lets you iterate through a list, iterate through an array, and it's a really simple way of thinking about the world. And it's the exact same way that I think about an XML database dump. An XML database dump contains pages, pages contain revisions, and you can go through them in order. That's exactly what the XML Sax Parser is doing, but not the way that you actually express it in the XML Sax Parser. So this library, this part of this Mediawiki utilities library, includes an XML dump parser, which provides a very simple iterator where you construct a dump, you iterate through pages, you iterate through the revisions in the pages, and print the revision ID. In these 12 lines of code, where I've added substantial white space in between each lines and superfluous comments, I've done this in 12 lines where it's not mistakable at all what I'm trying to do here, which is to go through the document and print out the revision IDs, compared to the XML Sax Parser, which is a mess. And so this is my goal. I parse XML all the time. And you may want my code that produces graphs, but you probably would rather have the code that I wrote to make XML parsing easier. All right, on to the next bit. So the next bit that I want to talk to you guys about is a library that I wrote to manage some of the experimental tools that I've been building for Wikipedia editors. So Mediawiki recently has Oauth, which is a library for managing authorization for a tool to operate on the user's behalf. And this is a nice way for tools like Huddle or Wikimetrics, which is a tool that we use for generating reports at the foundation, or Snuggle, which is one of my experimental user interfaces, to allow users to use their Wikipedia account through this third-party tool to perform actions on Wikipedia in a safe way. You know, back before OAuth, I actually had to take users' username and password, and you're relying on trusting me and the software that I write to keep that secure for you. With OAuth, you don't need to. So here's the way that OAuth works. So there's this three-step process where first you initialize the handshake by having your tool talk to Mediawiki and saying, hey, I would like to shake hands with you, to have a user's authorization. The second step, you say, okay, user, go to Mediawiki and tell Mediawiki that you authorize me as an application to act on your behalf. And then the third step is, now that your tool has this authorization code from the user, it says, hey, Mediawiki, the user came back and said I'm authorized. Give me an access token so I can now act on behalf of the user. Simple, right? 3 steps, not too bad. You have to send the user somewhere, but it's pretty straightforward. And there are these parts that you have to keep track of, like this request token. There's a verifier that happens in the middle, and then an access token that you get at the end. And you're going to have to deal with a little bit of weirdness when you actually call the things in Mediawiki. You're not going to hit the API. Instead, you're going to call this special page that is this OAuth authorized. This is the middle call in the set. And manage a request key and a request secret. And you're going to have to deal with JSON Web Tokens, which is the special standard for having signed tokens of structured data that can be sent between machines. And you're going to have to deal with checking a whole bunch of things to make sure that there's not man-in-the-middle attacks happening. And then you pull your hair out, or you give up, or you just take usernames and passwords because that's easier. So what I really wanted to do with this was make it easier, make it straightforward for people to interact with the system. And so this isn't as few lines of code as the XML dump parser, because this has to be a 3-step process. But what I'd like to point out with this MW OAuth library that I have listed is that this 3-step process requires you to not think of any of those hair-pulling things and just think of the 3-step process that are described right at the top of the documentation for OAuth. You get this consumer secret and consumer key from Mediawiki. You tell it where to find Mediawiki's index.php. You set up your request token and initiate a handshake. You can see that I've actually commented these steps inside the code. So you can follow along. This matches the step 1, 2, and 3 that I had on the slides back a few. So step 2 is authorize. I'm sending the user in their browser to go to Mediawiki and authorize it. They send me back a query string, which is what Mediawiki tells them to do. And then I get an access token, and I'm done. So in these 25 lines of code that conform to the high-level spec of OAuth, you can implement your OAuth signing system and be done with it and have your users use this tool and not pull out your hair. Okay, next. Difference algorithms. So a lot of my work, I want to track authorship of content in Wikipedia. I want to know who added what content and how long it survives. So I need difference algorithms to do this, to find out what changed in between revisions. So I have a list of tokens here, ABCD on the left and ADCB on the right. And if we just look at this, it's very intuitive to us as humans to see what actually is the difference between these sets of tokens. That the A corresponds to the A, the B corresponds to the B, the D corresponds to the D, and the C stays in its spot. But it turns out that the most common difference algorithm that's used, it's referred to as a longest common substring strategy. It doesn't understand moves, not in the way that we would hope that it would anyway. And so the longest common substring thinks that B died in the first version, and then a new B was formed in the second version. This is a pain when you're trying to track authorship, because anytime that somebody moves a chunk of content in Wikipedia, it's going to cause problems, and you're going to forget who the actual author was. So what we'd really like to do is develop an algorithm that actually can track these sort of page moves and do it in a robust way so that we're not introducing other problems. It turns out that there's some really good work on this that's been published in recent years by Fabian Flock et al. And Luca De Alfaro. And so they've been working on algorithms that track this content in a robust way. And using their work and doing some generalization of the strategy, I've been able to come up with a segmentation strategy where you split the content in a Wikipedia article into paragraphs, sentences, and white space. You decide which chunks are matchable between two versions of a document, identify those chunks that match, and then perform the longest common substring difference algorithm on what's left over. And what you end up with is something that's much more closely matches human intuition. And so this is state-of-the-art algorithm. The implementation, as far as I know, no one's ever implemented something like this before. And so I just have a simple library that will do it for you. And actually, I don't have a demo of it, but it conforms to the Python standard approach for performing difference algorithms. So you can actually just drop it in place of the actual longest common substring matcher, and this will do exactly what you expect. So that's the set of utilities. Oh, actually, sorry, there's one more that I forgot to talk about because I didn't have a slide for it. And so this is Wiki class. So I really should have a slide with the citation here. Morten Warnke Wang goes by Netrom on English Wikipedia, runs SuggestSpot, if you're familiar with the project. He developed this strategy for using actionable characteristics of an article to try and identify the quality of it. This is a really useful thing because when you're trying to algorithmically identify the quality level of an article, there's a lot of signals that aren't really actionable, like how many people edit the article. It's hard for me to say this article is low quality, but if you go in and edit the article, or if you get a bunch of people to edit the article, it'll be high quality. It'd be much better if I could say this article lacks headers, or this article isn't long enough, it's missing citations in this particular section. And so what he did was he built a quality detector that specifically uses these actionable items so that we can tell people when we do a quality assessment what they should do about raising that quality assessment. And so I've captured this in a library so that you can just set about and use this. There's this really simple strategy for constructing a model for this. You can see that this is only 9 lines of code. From this wiki class, I'm just importing this model. This is a random forest text model. I'm loading a pre-generated model file from the repository. You can actually pull this model file from the GitHub repository where this is hosted. I ask it to classify some stuff from standard in, and it will tell me the probability of assessment class that it found. And so let me pull up the example that I have here. So waffles. So the article on English Wikipedia for waffles has some hand-coded assessments that appear on the talk page. There are a couple wiki projects that have gone through the trouble of trying to determine what quality level this article is in. So Wiki Project Breakfast has decided that this article is of B-level quality, and it's also of top importance, which makes sense because waffles are totally breakfast food. Wiki Project Food and Drink isn't quite sure that it should be B quality. They note that the article has not yet been checked against the criteria for B-class status, and they're not quite sure what the importance is. We can ask the model whether it needs to be updated from B-class or not, or sorry, updated to B-class or not. So, hopping back to my terminal, I've grabbed the text for waffles, which should be, where are you? Ah, yeah, example stub. So this file contains the raw markup for the article on waffles, and I can simply cat this markup into my oops, where are you? Wiki class. Oops, Python. I install Wiki class. This is what I get for testing my installations. I always uninstall everything before I run a test to make sure that when you install it from scratch, it's going to work, or at least I know what the common problems are going to be. Regretfully, that's not very good for demos. We can get pandas in just a minute here, then I'll declare victory.
You could use build.env and then just switch.
Sorry?
You could use build.env.
Yeah, you're right. I totally should. But I'm lazy, and I use the same virtual env for all of my development. Yeah, you're not. I know. Come on. Yeah, I always found these warnings that you see when you're compiling something from source a little disconcerting. Yeah, I just hide them. Sure. Yeah. No, that's great.
How fast is that?
This laptop. So for those of you viewing the stream, he's asking about my Lenovo X1. It's the i5 generation, and I like it a lot. It doesn't have enough battery life. It's really too bad. So it's not a good airplane machine, but it's a good everything else machine. Yeah. And they sell external batteries, but that makes me sad. Not that they sell them, of course, but that I would have to use one.
But it's the lightest laptop, isn't
it? It's incredibly light. It's superbly light, much lighter than a MacBook Air, but it's made out of different materials, so that's why.
So anybody else following along? I've had difficulty installing Wiki class as well, but I've also posted a tutorial on what was needed to get over it on the blog, because this requires Python 3.
Yeah.
And it's like Pandas sklearn has you need to install a different package that isn't in pip.
Oh, you're right, and I'm not going to succeed in installing that. Yeah, so I think we're gonna declare victory for this point, and say that I promise you it was going to say that it's 60% sure that it should be a B-class article, and if Wiki Project Breakfast had not classified that article beforehand, and so Wiki Project Food and Drink was the only one that did, I could algorithmically tell Wiki Project Food and Drink that when you go back to this, you're probably going to classify it as a B, and this might be kind of urgent because it looks like it's a much higher quality than the last time that you classified it. In fact, there's an open request right now for me to do this in Wiki Project Medicine, and maybe if I find some time during the hackathon tomorrow, I'll go give them a list of articles that they should update the classification for. So since I'm running a little bit early, there's one more library that I want to show you that's actually quite early in its development cycle, but it's one thing that I'm really excited about. I'm just going to pull up the idea page for this, which is the way that we distribute ideas for the research hackathon side of this larger hackathon that we're having.
I have a question for
yes.
The previous topic, but isn't the issue if you would be suggesting what is the classification is that then you overfit in some way after a long time, like if people start trusting your code on classification and they're just confirming, and then in time. So the question, if you guys didn't catch that, was does making this prediction and sharing it with people and then having them perform a reassessment cause a feedback loop where basically we're just overfitting my model and having people just reflect what the model says? I think that's definitely a reasonable concern. This has been empirically validated in like recommender systems, that if a recommender system tells you that you're going to really like a thing, you're going to rate it higher whether you actually really like it or not.
And so, yeah, I think that's a serious concern. I wouldn't put it past the average Wikipedian, though, to be distrustful of the algorithm and want to perform their own assessment, to even be on the lookout for problems in the algorithm, and that I think would actually be really valuable. Cluebot does this. So it has people report false positives, and so that might be a good way to have people give feedback for where the algorithm isn't working, rather than just being encouraged to agree with it.
How would it work on different languages?
That's a really good question. So I've trained this model in English Wikipedia, but it's relatively it doesn't care what language it's working with. The text model works. It uses a natural language processing library. So just so long as there's a stemmer for the language that you want to work with, and there's a lot of stemmers, so probably yes, then you can apply the exact same feature set to the language that you want. The feature set is also abstractable. So if you can't apply like some of the features that we apply in English Wikipedia, that's okay. You can just make another feature extractor that doesn't include them. The random forest model doesn't really care what features you're throwing in. You'll probably still get really high signal.
But there wouldn't be a possibility of taking Spanish and English and working out general quality of, let's say, the science articles in English compared to in Spanish, so we can look at specific articles that need to be changed.
So that's I think that it might be difficult unless you had the exact same hand coders for both sets, and even then I'm not sure that language wouldn't have a confounding effect. But if we generally agree that we don't care about those sort of differences, I think that would be a really valuable way to get a sense for the differing quality levels between wikis. And the cool thing about this is you don't need to hand code all of the articles in a wiki to know what proportion it is. You can hand code a relatively small sample, train this classifier on it, and then run it across the whole set. It's not going to be perfect, but the error is relatively evenly distributed on either side, so you're going to get pretty good proportions from it. Okay. So back to this last thing that I wanted to demonstrate for you guys, which is Mediawiki Events. So one of the things that I do really often when I'm trying to build tools for Wikipedia is I want to be synchronized with what's happening in Wikipedia. So, for example, in this Snuggle tool that I have, I want to show you what's happening to good new users who are trying to do something productive in the wiki right now. The tool is designed to show you when new users are getting warnings. It's critical that I can show you that this new user got a warning within seconds after they actually got the warning. But it's hard to listen to Wikipedia. There's a few ways that you can do it, but it's a relatively complex task to both listen to changes that are happening in real time in Wikipedia and make sure that you haven't missed any. So I've been working on a library to solve that problem, and actually pulled up, there's this idea page for it. So there's a library and an idea for how we can centralize our event structure in Wikipedia, rather than focusing on revisions in pages as state artifacts. Instead, focus on the actions that users perform. And so if you go to this idea page that's on Meta that I've been talking to people about at the Research Hackathon, you can see that I've spec'd out a set of public events that happen on Mediawiki wikis with a set of fields that I think are really important to grab. So you can see this is the revision saved event. It includes a timestamp, a user, and a comment. All events have a timestamp, a user, and a comment. It also includes some revision metadata like the ID, the previous ID, number of bytes, the page ID that it was applied to. However, some of these events are missing critical details. So when I look at the page moved event, I'll point out that the logging table does not include the page ID of the page that was moved, which is a really big problem, because if you have the title and namespace, that's great and all, but when you move a page, the title and namespace change. So you would much rather have the page ID, and so I flagged that there's an open bug that's we're currently discussing about the right way to record this particular page ID in the logging table so that we can expose it through the API. What this library does is it incorporates this standard way of looking at events into a framework that's built up in Python and flags when data is unavailable as opposed to just null. And so I just want to show you quick that you can use this library to trivially listen to Wikipedia. I'll pull up my example here, which is listen. I'll give it the language that I want to listen to, which is English Wikipedia. And right now, what's scrolling by on the screen are revisions as they're saved with this exact same structure that I was just showing you. And so what I'm hoping that we can do with this library is both have useful tools that can listen to Wikipedia in a robust way, but also standardize our event structure and make sure that we fill in missing data so that our data sets are more useful for tools and more useful for science. And it looks like I lost my presentation.
Good question.
Mm-hmm.
To be technical, what are you using for this stream, like Node or what's the source of data?
So the source of what you were just seeing is the recent changes API. However, there's a few sources. I actually list them out on that page describing this standardized data source. And I would like to incorporate as many of them as I can so that you can pick your source. So a really good example of this is there's a pub sub RC stream available. That's a much more efficient way to listen to what's happening in Wikipedia. However, it doesn't let you query back in the history. It doesn't let you pick up from where you left off. It only gives you current events. However, if you want to use that with the standardized structure, I would like to enable you to. That's not implemented yet, but it's definitely on the way. In fact, I would really love pull requests.
So you're currently pulling regularly data?
Yeah, it's currently polling, and it has a relatively simple strategy for making sure that it doesn't overpoll and that sort of stuff. Okay, so I just want to recap the arguments that I gave you here today. First, I think research software as libraries is absolutely critical, and capturing those libraries in well-documented spaces with examples so people can actually go back and make use of them, as opposed to just your statistical and plotting code, which I think is definitely valuable but hard to make use of again. I think this is important and something that we should generally adopt. That more collaboration is going to lead to more science. That this stuff is openly online. I would love it if you would submit bugs or pull requests, ask for features, or submit those changes yourselves. And the really cool thing about this, the thing that I really want to get away from is hair pulling. That there's a lot of wiki archaeology, a lot of reverse engineering work that needs to be done in order to make sure that you're getting data the way that you expect it out of Mediawiki. I would love to wrap that up in code so that you don't have to go read through the wiki archaeology articles that I write on Meta to try and figure out when data changes and what you should do about it. We should all benefit from solving complexity and solving bugs. Thank you. All right, Yubi, do you want to come up next?
Is this slide publicly available?
It is. I actually have these slides on a research showcase page. I will broadcast them to the chat room afterwards. Yeah, it's up on comments.
I'm going to tweet it, so you guys follow Wiki Research.
That's why I kept losing myself. There we go.
You just keep your laptop on.
Yeah, I'll just leave it just like that.
I don't want to mess with that now.
Okay.
Oh, right. No, I'm going to use my laptop.
Oh, you are?
Just load it up.
Oh, sure.
That would probably crash your browser. So I'm just going to switch to. Can you switch this to my screen?
Yeah, so Eric, you're hosting, so you need to switch.
I'm not.
Okay. Can you switch this to my screen?
Are you in the Hangout?
Yeah.
So the problem is, actually, if we can get Enrique's laptop up here, that would be best. Yeah, or you can just plug in.
Is that
You can just open
It is.
Hangouts.
okay?
The Hangouts on yours.
Yay, technical difficulties.
Yeah.
You can open the Hangout in your.
Yeah, we can do that. Just open Hangouts and
Just click on the UV screen. No.
Okay.
You can't full screen this, can you? You can.
There we go. All right. Is that what you want?
Oh, that's just my keyboard on my
Okay.
mouse. That's yours.
It is?
It is. I don't want to have it in. Right. There we go. Can you full screen this?
Should be streaming you, but it's not showing anything.
So it looks like this is the best that I can do.
Yeah.
Is that going to be okay?
Yeah, that's gonna be fine.
Okay, great.
Cool. Hi, people. I'm Yubi. I am not a researcher. I have not many ideas about science. So I work for the Wikimedia Foundation in the mobile apps team. But none of that is anywhere related to what I'm going to be showing off now. Okay. Okay. Right. Right. Better now? Better? Okay. Okay. So back again. So hi, I'm Yubi. I work with the mobile apps team with Wikimedia Foundation, and I'm not a researcher. I write Java code for a living. But this is completely unrelated to any of that. This is a project I've done in my spare time, which is like fundamentally it lets you write SQL queries against like the Wikimedia databases and get results in a very collaborative and shareable manner. To go back, like the reason, so I volunteer with Tool Labs, if you guys have heard of it. It's like the environment for volunteers and researchers that the Wikimedia Foundation has to run code, to access the databases directly, so you can, like, instead of having to run like 20 API requests, you can do a one select statement and get the data you want. And it'll be much faster and much easier to write as well. But like Labs has a problem, which is that it is like the barrier to entry is pretty complex, right? You have to first sign up for it. And then you have to understand how SSH works, and then you have to like set up things to use SSH, and then there's like a couple of manual steps in it where someone has to approve you before you get on Labs, right? So the underlying idea is like, what happens if you make it easier for people to do research of some sort, right? Like, I'm not a researcher, but I can have like vague, simple questions, right? Like, how many links does this page have in, or how many users registered on this day? Because some event happened in this country, does that affect this, right? So these are not like questions I probably need like intense. Like, I don't want to, if I'm not already set up on Tool Labs, I don't want to like spend like 2 hours trying to get set up just so I can run a simple query. So that is like the use case for this tool, right? You're just like a casual researcher. So this is like very, very simple. You log in with your Wikipedia account. Right. Okay, so this is using Oauth. This is using the Oauth library that like Aaron wrote. So this is kind of like the demo that he couldn't give. Okay. Right. So I just click login, and I'm logged into Meta. If I'm not logged into Meta, it'll ask me to log in to Mediawiki, and then I just get this: SQL query would like to have basic access. So basic access in this case means like pretty much nothing. I can see what rights you have. I can see your user ID, and that's it, right? Because all I need to know is that you are this user, right? And that's it. So I click allow, and that's it. I'm logged in with my Wiki account on this. It says Yubi Panda, which is my user account on the top right. You can see that. It's kind of bare bones right now, but it works. So I can click new query, and it gives me a text box to which I write my SQL query. Right, so to do something super simple, like select star from a page, which will kill the databases. So I will instead do limit 10. Right, this is like, that's kind of unreadable because of the color scheme, but that just select star from page, limit 10, which is a super simple query, and then I hit submit query, and you get the results. Right, that's it. You didn't have to sign up anywhere else. There was no manual steps. All you had to do was just log in, write your query, and run, and it gives you the result. Like, this is a simple query, but you can have queries that run for up to 10 minutes right now, and soon you'll implement like user rights, so you can like have them run up to a day if you're a trusted user, so we know you're not going to fuck them up, for example. And the other cool thing is, so this is this URL, right? You can share this URL to anyone, and they will be able to see the results of this query. Right, so I'm just going to copy this and open it up in an incognito window, so I'm not logged in. And obviously, if I go there, I can actually see the. Okay, I can't see that because screen share doesn't show me. But if you go to this URL, right, like you will be able to see the query and the results, right? And that's like publicly open to everyone else. So the other like underlying thing that I want to do here is to make it like a collaborative thing. So one of the features I'm working on right now is a fork button there. So you have a query that you like, but you want to modify it because you have a slightly different question to the question that the original person who wrote the query had. So you fork it, right, and modify it a little, and then you run it, and then you answer your own question. And the person who you forked it from will obviously know that you forked it. So he might, like, you might have made an improvement that you will like incorporate back into his query. So that is like the goal that I'm hoping to accomplish over like the next couple of weeks. But this is where it is now, and this has like quite a bunch of useful queries. So you can, like, all of the queries you're writing are like public by default. they're just visible to everyone, and they're licensed. The code itself is licensed like CC0, and you can see like the queries everyone has been running. I'll increase the font size. Right. So you can like title the queries, but like apparently most people don't, including me. So yeah, this doesn't do pagination yet, so I can only see like the last 24 hours. I mean the last 25 query runs. But yeah, I have opened up a bunch of these before. Like this is like number of new accounts per day since forever, like since the start. And this query like ran, and like you can just see this, right? Like every single day, like how many accounts were registered, like all the way till the end, like till today, right? And this data you can like this is exposed as JSON as well. So for example, if you want to run like if you want to set up a dashboard of sorts, you can just like directly get this JSON data output and then chart it into whatever, right?
Is that acceptable? This key query this service.
Right. So you can't like there's no API to query this, right? There's an API to access the results, right? And I want to make sure that like the system is set up in such a way that can handle like you querying the results. As long as right, yeah, right. We don't have refresh. Like the query doesn't refresh it, right? It just is like the last time you hit run. Okay. And so yeah, this is like since like every time you can like do this. Obviously, like the next cool hack would be to have like visualization capabilities in this, or make it possible like it's already possible for other people to pull this data and visualize it themselves. And then there's like other cool queries, like this, which is number of incoming links, I think, to Snoop Dogg, which is 4,395. Fine. Number of new accounts per day, just the same as before. Untitled query, just someone playing around. Untitled query, so another huge query, which got killed because, like again, right now there's a 10-minute limit because this is the same like database that everyone in ToolLab is using. So if you are Wikipedia and you use like any tool that's hosted on tools.wmslabs.org, this is the database you're using. So we should be careful to make sure we don't kill that one and like make it available to everyone else. So there is like a 10-minute timeout at this point. So if your query does not complete in 10 minutes, you'll get killed. At this point, like it's not like you can't run it anymore. You just have to sign up for ToolLab, jump through like the 3 hoops that exist there, and then you can run it forever. ToolLab does not have a query limit, right? We just have a query limit here because it's like so much easier, and we're just starting out, so we don't know how much like the demand is going to be, how many queries are going to be run, and if it's going to melt down our servers. So over time, we'll like evolve it and figure out solutions to the problem. Right, and this is like list of new accounts, like who are all the users who have registered to this like some particular date. So yeah, and if you want like right now, right, if you want to like if let's say I want to like instead of this date, I want to like check since I don't know August 3, so I can just like right now there's no fork button. If there is, I just click fork. But right now I'm just going to copy this, hit new query. The new query opens up. I'm going to paste it, and then I'm just going to change this date to say 08 and say 05. Right, that should work. Then I'm going to hit run, and it's going to run for a while. I'm not sure how long it's going to run for. Fine, it'll run. And then you will see the output when it has finished running. But anyway, so that's pretty much it. Right? It's a tool that lets you share queries and query results and work on them collaboratively. This has like been going on for like the last 2 weeks, and we are like at like a very early beta stage. Things should like all like the basic functionality works, but we're still like trying to figure out what exactly would make this more useful. So questions now, and also I think one thing we want to do is like after like the showcase and demos are over, is for the people who are interested, they can just like hang around and like talk to us about like what would you find useful in this kind of a tool, what would make like you use this, and what do you think will make like your friends and colleagues who might be interested in such a thing, but who don't do things like this because of the high barrier to entry and also because they don't know you could do this, what would make them use this, right? So that'll be awesome. But questions now?
There's one question here on IRC.
Mm-hmm.
For 401, he's asking, what would the party do if you didn't put the limits on that first query you showed? If we put an automatic limit
Like limit as in the select limit, right?
Yeah, you did this, that select star from page.
Right, so if I didn't put the limit, what will happen is the query will run for 10 minutes and then it'll just die. Right, but I wanted to actually complete and show me something, so I have a basic query, so I put a limit in it. We also considered like enforcing like a limit on every select, but that is going to kind of like invisibly mess with your queries. And also like we talked to like the database administrators at Wikimedia, and their thing was limits are not going to be your biggest problem, because you can mess with the database in a lot of ways very easily without having to have a huge limit. So the worst thing that could happen with a huge limit is that this query, the tool, would slow down, right? Or like your browser might crash because you just downloaded 100,000 rows into your like browser window, but the database is going to be fine. And so we're just going to have like no limit enforcement, just like time-based enforcement at this point.
So right now, all the data is
right. So right now, all the data comes to your client. So if you're like kind of unlucky, you might just crash your web browser because it's just pulled in like 100,000 rows into it. We're like, that's like, again, this is like early beta stages, and I will fix that to add pagination. And there's a download CSV button, except that it doesn't work because the code for it has not been written, which I will write at some point. So yeah.
So I'm getting a strange error, which is unified login needed.
Right. So this is
because my media account is brand new, or is this something that?
If it is brand new and you are getting that error, that means that there is a bug in the Wikimedia login code. I will grab you.
Get me to unify with my projects. Since I've got 5 projects and everything's good, so
right. Yeah. So that's like that seems to be a bug in SUL, which so I'll grab you after like the thing. And,
so what if you see issues with your accounts that for some reason are not unified?
Yeah, it's vague.
The database is all languages, right? So
yeah, there's a database for all languages. So if you want like the German Wikipedia, so it's like the format is language code wiki _p is like public, right? Yeah, so I can just do that.
Actually, that's something we need to document here because
right.
It's not trivial.
Yeah, we need to like document like a lot of things, right? Like I can just do use dwiki _p select. This is my favorite query. 5. Okay, what did I do now? Okay, right, yeah. I apparently can't remember my favorite query. See, I'm not a researcher, I can't write SQL. Right, so this is from German Wiki. So this is there for all wikis, including Wikidata, Commons, like every project, right? You can use this. And you can also do like joins across projects, right? Because they're all on the same database, so you can join from wherever to wherever to do things as long as it fits in the 10-minute thing. Yeah.
Is this only for selects?
You can't do inserts because the underlying user does not have write access to anything, so you can't really do inserts. But yeah, so only selects at this point. But obviously, you can have like things like set a variable to something and then use it to select. That works. But you can't do inserts, just selects. Yeah.
Maybe you told it and I missed, but this is run against the current version of data, or?
Right. So we have this thing called LabDB,
okay.
which is a sanitized version of the live database, which is right. Like so, it's the current version of the database. Like it might at worst like be behind by a few minutes, okay. And usually not, and sometimes yeah, and that's pretty much it. Like it has some data is redacted. Like obviously, like if you do select star from user, you're not going to get like the passwords. Watch this data is not available. Like so, the idea is every data, like all data that you can get by making an API request or seeing in the Mediawiki UI as an unauthenticated user, that data will be available in LabDB, right? And you can query directly. Anything else? Yeah.
Just one little comment. When you get to download CSV sorted out, maybe we could also get a download SQL button, right? So whoever could, they can actually download a simple SQL file and sync directly into their database.
Oh yeah, that's actually pretty cool. That I didn't think of. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Right. Yeah. So that's the other thing. So we could have like download the data in multiple different formats, right? JSON, CSV, SQL, whatever you want. So yeah, that's like the next thing we need to add at some point. So right. So if you're like more questions, yeah. Okay.
This orders then pages by page ID.
Right, this is just like a default query that I think orders by page ID. Yeah, it seems to be ordering by page ID. But yeah. Sure, at some point in the future.
You should repeat the question. I don't think they can hear it.
Oh, the question from Toby was, will I help them get the page view data into some usable form? Yeah, yeah. Should hopefully get that at some point, because I think if you can, especially if you can join the page view data with this, right, it'll be super useful for like a lot of things. So hopefully we'll have infrastructure to do that at some point in a sane-ish way.
One thing that I find is maybe one of the sister wikis, and you have into wikis that come into the sister wikis, there's no way to find what links Wikipedia, English or whatever into a sister wiki. And some of that queries, even the simple situation of doing that, knows means you can go back to the sister wikis and fix things up, which we can't do easily. So if something like that standard query, then you can just log and take a magic word to your file, and then like to take the magic word, so the page you write, all they extract this to text, and then you can just go back.
So it's kind of like a template.
I'm just thinking you might be able to just write a query. So like, at certain times you can just go into the page history somewhere else. If we know what the page is and say, show me the links for this file, plus Wikipedia, then you can just go and move the page. Especially with how we distribute your own sources.
Okay. I'm sorry, but I couldn't really understand your accent in someone.
No,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
I'll talk to that.
Yeah.
So I have a question that's kind of for the audience though. Who here has written SQL against a MySQL slave of Wikipedia? So not many people in the room. Who's going to go do it now?
Who's using it?
Yeah. So who's using the API to get their data? Or the XML docs? All right. So we're about even on all the sets, but no majorities.
Yeah. So I guess I could probably use a little more time. So what kind of features would you guys like on this, like on top of this? Yeah.
Stars.
Right. So like fork and like star, so you can keep like a favorite list and share your favorite lists with people.
And also rank the most popular ones.
Right. Yeah. Some kind of ranking.
Yeah, I mean, in addition, I think being able to search through queries and written. I don't know if like plain text search, but maybe tagging would be good. Or
right. Yeah, tagging might be actually quite useful.
To be related to that, there's no description field.
Right.
Right. So like a short description of what the queries.
Right.
Right. Users of any map.
Yeah. So like a description, like a simple description field plus tagging plus search. Yeah.
And I'm also wondering, like, how does the data complexity compare to the complexity of getting the data out? I mean, I don't have any experience in both of them.
Right. Are you talking about getting the data out of two labs into a form?
This is one step, of course, but like knowing you write SQL as human business, but like getting an understanding of what the structure of the data is.
Right. Yeah.
It's probably more work.
More work than yeah. So that so one of the things that I was thinking of doing was having like a schema explorer.
Yeah.
Right. Like with like the schemas in a very searchable / explorable form, plus like the indexes and everything, and also like have like just a bunch of templatized like basic queries you can look at and learn from. So that would be useful as well. Right, yeah, kind of like the structure in PHP might have been, but hopefully not that terrible. But yeah.
Have you seen the Facebook Graph Explorer?
No, I have not.
So I think they did write SQL set queries against database, and I think it's interesting. It's very similar running color. And I think what you can do is they have output type, so that you can see which columns you have and so on. I think that for users that's useful, because sometimes you don't know how to
Right.
draft and what against like you can join.
Yeah. Like what is there itself and like what you can join against what and get what. So I think like that would be like if the interest is in getting people who don't write SQL now to be able to like or who have like no basic SQL skills. Like I have basic SQL skills. I know I can do selects. I can do joins after reading the documentation every single time, and I can do inserts and stuff properly. But I can't really do much else, right? So if you like have help available as you're writing it, then obviously like after a while you kind of internalize that a little bit, and that is probably going to be like a really big thing that would help like people who non-researchers get into this, and which we should do.
Yeah, I was wondering. I think you mentioned a few moments in the talk that there are examples that we can all imagine where you run up against the limits of this and actually need to actually use tools.
Yeah.
It could be great to try to build some queues into the system that can help onboard people onto tools.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So facilitate that transition so that people can become more advanced users and progress past this.
That would be awesome.
Because I think this is an amazing tool, and it would be a great way to sort of gear
like,
people up,
step them up, right?
Get them into the more advanced usage. Yeah, the other thing I was going to suggest, and actually this is sort of a question, and maybe an offer for another demo. How easy is it to get redirect data out of this stuff?
How easy to get what?
Redirect data out of this stuff. Because if we're going to go into the world of page views, what was your question before?
So I'm going to let Aaron take that because he knows the structures much better than I do.
So it's gross. So
yeah, that's my
there's a field in the page table that is redirect. If that's set to true, the page is a redirect, and it can only possibly have one link, one outgoing link. So you can go to the page links table and find out what that outgoing link is. And so these are fast joins because they're based on indexes, but it's a pretty gross way to do it.
However, there's a caveat that obviously redirects change over time. So if you want to try and get a snapshot of how many page views all the data redirects to a page got at this specific point in time, you need to know exactly how loud. Right.
You're going to go to the top.
So I say this because Mako, Ellen, and I have a little note that Wiki said that talks about this. And we did it on the dumps, right, where you can sort of make a guess. Right, if I can see that the redirect started on July 1st and ended on July 31st, all the page views from July go to the target of the redirect. But otherwise, you don't really know, right? That's a major feature for potential page API, like LabDB of aggregating across wherever redirect exists. Yeah. Okay.
So
that was left field.
Yeah, another thing that's actually related to this is that this is on LabDB, and users can create their own databases on LabDB. Ouch, sorry. Right.
You can set your own database.
Right, so you can have your own databases, right? So for example, with this like redirect stuff, if you have like some sort of tool that maybe like first extracts from the dump and then listens to new events to keep them updated or something like that, you can just create your own database and put that on two labs and like publicize, saying, hey, there is this database, go use it. And people can just join against that, right? It's just a simple MySQL database. So that is like a way that could happen. So you don't have to like do this joins every time yourself, but have like a pre-made thing made for you at some point. If this were like a nicer database like PostgreSQL, you'd just have a materialized view, and that would do it for us. But sadly, we're stuck with like this forever. So yeah.
Is there any scope within Wikimedia to move from SQL to a NoSQL?
No.
No?
No. we use like different parts of it for different things. Like Redis is like pretty highly used, and there's like Hadoop stuff going on. But like for Cassandra, right? Yeah. So like NoSQL is not like one thing that will like, oh no, RDBMS are dead. It's like they have very useful use cases in particular places, and we are using them in particular places. But MySQL, or like rather relational databases, seem to be pretty good at this particular thing. So yes, is that it? So yeah, so Aaron, do you want to set a time when like people who are interested in this kind of wrap together at the corner and talk about what you want to do?
Sorry, I'm confused.
Okay. After like the showcase, can we like whoever is like interested in like contributing in any form, like just like feature suggestions, things that could be different, what we could do better, and things like that. We could probably just like congregate around here after like the end and talk about it, because like I'm like actively developing this at this point, right? So features will probably get added quite fast. So that'll be awesome. And that's it. Thanks.
So I think we have one more minute, right? And Jordan will be driving from this.
Yeah, if you want to drive from there.
Yeah.
Okay, that's just fine.
Do you know how to do the Google Hangouts?
Should probably unmute him.
Yeah, make sure that you mute. Yubi.
Oh yeah. No, it's fine. No, it's fine. Oh, okay, sorry. Do you think you can move there? Because I have to keep, like, I have to use the laptop keyboard.
I'm going to sit next to you and turn the chair off.
Oh yeah, we could do that.
So can you see my screen? Okay, retake.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm David Lagnado from Barcelona Media. I'm a researcher, and well, this presentation was not scheduled, but it's just an improvisation. So I will show you the demo online of this tool that we are developing in a collaboration among 4 institutions. So Barcelona Media Research Center, Sciences Po, the Media Lab in Paris, Digital Methods in Amsterdam, and the Density Design in Milan. Well, this was part of a bigger European project, EMAPS, Electronic Maps to Assist Public Science, and it was focused on climate change as a case study. So all the examples we have now are about climate change, but the idea is that this will be implemented for the whole Wikipedia.
There we go. We should be back. Can you hear us okay?
Okay, so can you hear me? Well, So here I expanded the first section of the article, and so I can see that the most controversial element is global warming. So maybe I don't go into the details of the metrics, but the idea is when a sentence is edited a lot, or users edit each other mutually on a sentence, and then you can define the parameters to give more weight to reverse or other kinds of stuff. So you get which are the most controversial sentences, and we identify the elements in this sense. So the links to external page, to other page in each section, and also image or other elements. So here you see global warming is the most controversial, then denialism or debate in popular media, and then you can also have another view for each section, which is about the discussion threads associated to it. This is still not working here, but we are working on associating the discussion threads from talk page to the sections, so with various heuristics, so you can just have a look on both sides of the controversy, from the edits or reverse, and from the discussions. Then another view is.
So quickly repeat the color code.
Yeah, so there warm color, like it's a kind of a heat map. Like red is the most controversial, while blue is the less controversial. So global warming is the most controversial element in this section, and denialism and debate in popular media, purple, are like say the second.
So why is it that only links are colored?
Yeah, so because the idea is we identify sentences, and then we assign the controversiality of that sentence to the elements within the sentence, so it's to the links contained in the sentence. Because otherwise it would be too much, not too detailed, and too much work to track each word. So we just focus on elements. We say if something is important in an article, it will have a link, and so we focus on these elements.
So sentences without links cannot be controversial?
Yes,
okay.
This is. Yes. For the moment. Then we are adding more features, so also templates or image, but we are keeping this. And also when a word appears as a link somewhere in the article, then we should be able to recognize it anyway, although it's not linked in that occurrence. Yes.
I'm looking at your graphs. They're really nice. And so if I choose the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and then I hit Contra, the button. So for example, climate change and risk management coming up in red at 188. So those are the two words that would be the most controversial in.
So maybe you are in the other visualization, right?
Really, I'm looking at one of the graphs.
Great. So I go. Maybe it's the next visualization. No? So I think you are in the table, no? This.
Yeah, I see a little calendar that goes from 2001 to 2014.
This.
With all the edits in real time.
This one, right?
Users.
This.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is another visualization. So this is just more an abstraction. So we take all the elements that are controversial within the whole article, and we rank them. So the most controversial in this article is global warming. Then we have scientific opinion on climate change, denialism, and well, you can run this also selecting a time window. So just accounting for controversy during a certain window. So also you can see here where activity is concentrated, and then you can refine the search within only certain periods. And also this we should have like four timelines. So for activity in edits and activity in comments, and then a controversiality of the edits and of the comments. So this is the next version of it. Yeah, so you can see in which period every element in the article was more controversial, basically, and which users. Well, here you can see all the edits about this element.
Are each of the timelines normalized? Like, is the highest point always the highest point on the graph? So like, so like, are the amplitude of each?
Yes, now it's normalized by article. So the first element is 100, and then the others are just yeah.
So you can't see the relative controversy.
So from an article to another, no. Within the same article, it's all coherent. Then we will have other visualization for comparing articles. But then when you are within an article, you just see what is more controversial within that article.
I missed it, but how do you measure the controversy here? Like from one edit to the next edit, you look at if one element has been missing, or how do you know that that particular element is?
Yes, so this is the key question. We don't have.
They can't hear.
Yes, sorry. So the question is how we measure controversiality of the elements. So this is a key question. We are still working on testing many metrics and also manually validating. So let's say the basic idea is that when there are edits, when you edit something, you change a word, you remove some, there is a controversy potentially there. So it just the number of pairs of users editing each other, we are trying several of these metrics, and we are trying to refine it not counting inserts. So when you are only inserting content, maybe it's less controversial. We are trying several.
Speak about my question. What I'm trying to understand is, there's a sentence about that topic, like that there's a link to this each article. So you change any part of this text without deleting that article, like that link. Do you consider it as controversial? So if I just simply edit that page or the paragraph that contains that element, does it?
Yes. Yes. So the question is if we consider controversial something only when the link is deleted, or also when just the sentence containing the link is edited. And the second thing, so when the sentence is edited, we consider that there is potentially controversy there. So here then you can manually inspect all the edits that are being accounted for this. Seeing the diff, evidencing, highlighting, and then there is another expanded visualization for users. So in this case, you can see. Why it doesn't? Okay. So you can see the network of all users editing to each other in this about this element in that page.
What's an edge? What's an edge?
Yeah, so an edge we have several. So we have the same for discussions. And you can set the parameters here, for what you want to be visualized. In this case, the default is when you edit a sentence about containing this element after another user, basically when you are editing on another user. But then you could have it only for reverts or for replies in discussions. And
that's co-editing, contiguous co-editing of the same section.
Yes.
The same sentence, actually, the same fragment.
Yes. Yes. This is basically. Okay, so then we are trying to identify if it is possible to identify user factions. So in this case, you see the colors should tell that there is an orange faction and a blue faction. So this is very experimental. We are not sure that it is possible to detect this, but you know, if edge represent conflict, and it's not always true, but with some metrics it could be true. Then you based on an assumption that the enemy of your enemy is your friend, or something like that. Like if two users are reverting a lot, and other users, so probably and they are never reverting to each other. So we put them in the same function. We try to just experiment. Like. And okay, so this is almost everything, at least for what I can show you now. Then there would be other visualizations for the bipartite network of users and elements. So which users are more active editing global warming within this article, which is climate change denial, or this kind of thing. And then zooming out to see the network of articles and to see which among a set of articles, within a set of articles, which are the most controversial articles and also the most controversial links between articles. So, yeah. Okay.
Just one comment. If you check the Lab2 in Meta, you will find a project started by a Brazilian researcher about global warming controversies in Portuguese Wikipedia. So he's also doing this kind of research. He's also requesting some help to go through data in the Portuguese Wikipedia. So I think maybe you guys should be in contact and exchange some things. I think it's really related to the research he's doing. Actually, I was just working and helping him today, some minutes ago. And maybe we can catch up later. But
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's great. Like there is 2 different groups in different countries almost doing the same thing right now. It's incredible. Yeah. And just one comment from IRC. Tost is saying that the link to the working paper is given a 404. Like in contropedia.net/nemo/contropedia with stream 2014.pdf. It's not working, so
yes. So probably we have not published it because we will present it at Wikisim, but yeah, it's true. It's so yes, it's not published yet, but it will be soon. There will be something soon, and maybe well. Yes.
Another good question. Other than the visualization, is there any way of accessing the data via some kind of API? So all the computed metrics about controversies in this on a graphical basis, can they be accessed by an API, or you're planning on providing?
Yes. Yes. So whether the question is whether the data will be accessible through an API. Yes, in principle, now it's still very artisan, but we are developing like a API for so probably we can make it accessible. Also, like the idea is here we want to show the visualization, you know, with smart default parameters, so in a way that, because this is not only for Wikipedians or for expert users, it's also maybe for someone who wants to study a controversy and leveraging Wikipedia to study a controversy, because Wikipedia can represent society in some sense, or well, just then there will be this advanced interface, and so you can play with the parameters, and the idea is that you can also export the data that you are so you can visualize them and then export the data you want, and because of course the platform will not be able to do everything. So yeah. And also the tool is open source, so now it's just a work in progress. So there is some code in GitHub, some code is missing, but it will be soon open source, and we are very open to collaboration. Like if somebody wants to collaborate, or to also to discuss about the assumptions of what is controversial, how we can really detect controversiality in the micro level of edits, of replies. So it's an open topic. Yeah.
So there were 2 papers in 2008, I think CCW and Kai, that graphed controversy in Wikipedia using the revert strategy that you proposed. One was Nikki Couture. He says, she says, coordination and conflict in Wikipedia. The other one I just can't find. I know it's there, but I just couldn't find the author. Have you seen these? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think
wonder if their methods might just work for you.
Yeah, I think so. We implemented some metrics from literature. For example, the YAS series metrics for based on reverse of mutual reverse, giving more weight to users that are more active on the page. So this is something we have now. So we are not. You can specify that you want only reverse or that you want to give more weight to reverse with the parameters, but our default option is not giving much importance to reverse, because we are really interested in also in the dynamics of editing, which is also where we don't see controversy as a negative thing. First of all, this is maybe something you should so controversy is just part of life, you know. There's different points of view. So also the dynamics of editing can be even more interesting, because you see how points of view really get in contact with each other. And yes, so we are building on metrics of. We are not sure about this seniority, no? About so you can now specify the option whether you want to give more importance to users when both of them, let's say, when both of them have done many edits to the article, then you give more importance, because it means it's not kind of vandalism, or no, there is more engagement.
So the paper that Aaron was referring to, I think it's we trust metrics based on phrasal analysis. But you said there's 8.
The Alpha. This is Wikitrust, but this is more related to what he was presenting. Okay, there was one question from the back.
So, just to understand and clarify your process on this one. You consider that, for example, for global warming, it's controversial because in various Wikipedia articles that link to this article, like from change to change, you see that particular sentences that contain this article have been edited, right? But there's also the edits on this article. How do you take that into account when you consider controversial? For example, if I go and edit frequently the global warming article stuff, reverse, etc., I mean, does that also contribute to the controversialness of that particular article?
So this is a great question about something we have in mind. So whether when you edit something about global warming in another article, how this reflects. So for now, our visualizations are based on a single article. So you are just analyzing one article, and then you see which elements are controversial within that article. But what you say is something we are planning to do, like visualization of a network of articles, and you can visualize which are the most controversial articles in this network, because you have a hyperlink network, but a hyperlink can be more or less controversial. No? And so I think this is more or less what it was.
So right now you are majorly controversial with respect to one article.
Yes, yes. Now we are only working within a single article, at the article level. But that's something we have in mind, or we have already started, actually. Yeah,
right now, the only articles we can analyze are from a drop-down box. When can we select a particular article and analyze that?
Yes. So for the moment, we have just pre-processed just 20 articles related to climate change, and so articles will need to be pre-cached. Like, you can get this in real time if this has been pre-processed. Otherwise, it can take minutes or more. So yes, the platform, in principle, in our vision, in short time, it will be online. And if the article is pre-processed, you can have it in real time. Otherwise, you have to wait.
Does that mean that there's a business opportunity that someone could actually do that pre-processing and enable yourself and a whole range of other institutions to be able to do these kind of graphs? Or, I mean, would you want real-time streaming of data, or the ability to take data in as and when you need it?
Sorry, I'm not sure I understood the point of the...
If someone was to sit between Wikimedia and you guys and pre-process the information for you based on what your requirements were, I mean, I take it you're using Hadoop right now, or, I mean, can I ask how you pre-process the data?
How we propose, the idea is, I mean, this is a research project that was funded. Now we are looking for further fundings to go on, and we just want to make this available to any user. So we have several audiences in mind. So the first, of course, is Wikipedians, because this is an easy way to see all the conflict or the controversy that is behind an article, but also, I don't know, data journalists, researchers, yes, and anybody who is interested in seeing, you know, sociologists, social scientists, to see what is controversial behind.
Is it possible to get any of the code that you used for this?
Yes, I mentioned there is already some code in GitHub, and the rest of the code will be released. Yes, okay, I will catch you later. Yeah.
It seems like it's difficult for there to be a ground truth of how controversial these sort of articles are. So we just rely that your custom algorithm is giving a controversial sort of output. Have you thought about any other ways to compare your level of controversial ranking versus another method of controversial?
Yes, we always discuss a lot about this. Like, it's difficult to find ground truth because anyway there is no truth, right? Exactly. It's so what we are thinking of is like crowdsourcing and manual validation to assess our results. But also in the studies I've seen about controversiality, in the end, what you do is you kind of assume that when there is a revert, there is controversy, and then you compute mostly what is.
In that Control paper I brought up, they use cleanup templates that are put on the article. They're not really cleanup templates in that you should make this less controversial, but warning, there's controversy about this section, and so they were trying to figure out if they could detect them, and they compared false positive and false negative rates.
Yeah, I've seen that. So there is no easy way to assess it. There are also some lists made by Wikipedia, controversial articles, but you know, it's made manually. It can be even more noisy, no? Because something is missing just because nobody thought of it. That it's yeah. So maybe crowdsourcing is the only. Okay. So thanks a lot.
So let's we have another demo.
No, I think that wraps us up. Thank you so much for coming, everybody, and thanks to you guys online. We'll be around in the Wiki Research channel to talk to you guys a little bit afterwards, and we'll join the group Google Hangout, which will be different than this one. Thanks. See ya.
Maybe quick, share this log. On IRC, we're reachable at wikimedia-research. So wikimedia-research, that's where fucking cool.